We have some clients that we joke with because they've kind of been on this 2-year retirement plan for the last 10 years. In essence, they really enjoy what they're doing and they don't expect that they would get to their mid to late 60s and say, I think I want to continue to do this for a few more years. Now, at some point in there, they usually say, well, how is this going to impact Social Security? Am I going to be penalized by this? What are my benefits going to be like going forward? And what are my options? So we'll dive into how your Social Security benefit will be impacted if you work beyond your full retirement age today.
So Spencer, as we dive into another video about Social Security, one of our favorite topics, we have to remember first and foremost that we've got a deeper dive on Social Security PIA calculation, so how your primary insurance amount is calculated. We'll link that in the description below. We've talked about how your Social Security benefit can be taxed. We've talked about how Social Security is a trust and how it's not a trust fund, and a really deep dive on the history of Social Security. The reality is we're not talking about any of that today.
Right.
We're talking about what happens if you've crossed that threshold, you've reached your full retirement age. What is the decision to make then? And so again, if you have questions about any of those other topics, feel free to look at any of those other videos. But today, full retirement age, I'm still working and I'm kind of liking it. And it's kind of surprising.
Yeah.
So I've been on that 2-year retirement plan for maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
What do I need to think about when I hit that age? What are some of the key questions that we should pose?
Well, first, one of the key questions that we always get is, can I take benefits at full retirement age or will I be penalized? So if you're one of these folks that says, gosh, I'm really looking forward to getting some supplemental income from Social Security, but I'm still working, once you attain your full retirement age, which is age 66 to 67 for a lot of folks in their 60s right now, and will be age 67 for folks who are in their 50s and younger. But once you've reached that full retirement age, there are no penalties to taking benefits. So if you took at age 62, but you had $100,000 a year of earnings, then there would be a payback that you would have to do. And we've got information on that elsewhere. It won't be the topic that we'll get into today. But if you attain that full retirement age, let's say your full retirement age is age 66 and 4 months, and you want to go ahead and take those benefits, you're beyond that age, you can do so without any kind of payback, even if you're making $1 million a year in earnings. So we want to say that up front because we get that question all the time. But the maybe more important question as we get past that one is, well, what do I do if I'm still working, have a decent level of income, and may not need the Social Security benefits? How is my earnings impacting my primary insurance amount? And how should I think about this claiming strategy? So we'll dive into those pieces today.
Yeah. So again, to come to your primary insurance amount, the way that Social Security calculates it is it takes your 35 highest years of earnings indexed to inflation up until the time that you turn 60. Mm-hmm. And then once you turn 62, they have bin points that get locked in. Mm-hmm. And so once you've hit those bin points, you've got 90% of that first bin point, 32% in between the first and the second bin point, and then everything on top of the third up until that wage base. Once you've hit maximum earnings for 35 years, it's not going to go up that much higher. It's going to be 15% of that. So Social Security was really designed to replace the wages of that first bin point, that first portion there, 90% of it, to really help the lowest wage earners. Mm-hmm. The more you earn, the more the government, the more that they expect you to save for your own retirement, mm-hmm. and not just rely on funds that you've put into Social Security. And so there's more of a replacement at those early wages than there is at those later wages. Mm-hmm. So when we think about once you've hit that full retirement age, let's say you've had peak earnings, mm-hmm. it's not going to push it around a whole lot.
Right.
So you want to walk us through that a little bit more deeply.
Right. And one visual that we might even use is to say that as we pour our earnings into a bucket, the bottom of that bucket is going to be more solid. It's going to keep those earnings and it's going to allow us to use them going forward. But then as we get to that first and second bin point, there are some holes, in the system. So Social Security is not going to maintain those as much. It's not going to push up our benefit as much. There's going to be some leakage in there to the point where we had 90% replaced at the first levels there for the first few years of work typically. We've only got 15% replaced at that second bin point, so only 1/6 as much. And that's going to be pertinent in our conversation today, because if we have, say, 30 years or even 35 years of a high level of benefit, then the replacement is going to be very, very marginal. So we're going to talk about this in a couple of different ways. First, if you have Social Security, if you have earnings, one of the things that will be most helpful to you is you don't have to take out necessarily as much money from savings. You may not even need Social Security benefits because you have those earnings, which is a substantial advantage to you. And whether you're passing on resources to heirs or charitable institutions, it still gives you a lot more latitude. So we want to say up front that earnings can be a great opportunity to be able to do some of this extra living and giving, and it means you don't have to tap into funds as early oftentimes. So that's the first benefit. It doesn't have anything to do with your Social Security primary insurance amount, but it's still a significant benefit. The second thing that's often underappreciated is it gives you oftentimes enough income where you're not tempted to take Social Security benefits before you attain the age of 70. So let's just say, again, you're 66, you're thinking, well, I'm enjoying working. I might work another 2, 3, 4 years. If you can defer Social Security benefits out to age 70, you're getting an 8% step up or deferral credits for every year beyond your full retirement age that you defer those benefits. And it steps up on a month-to-month basis. So if you only deferred 6 months, you still get a significant benefit in there. But that deferral can be huge because even if your primary insurance amount doesn't step up, oftentimes we'll see scenarios run where if a client can defer from 67 to 70, they may put another $80,000, $100,000, $120,000 in their pockets of expected benefit. Now, none of us knows when we're going to pass away, but expected benefit, because if they live into their late 80s or 90s, that level of income is going to be huge, amassing over time, which that's typical for our clients. We're going to be looking out into their late 80s or their 90s for a life expectancy table, their overall. So that's a second benefit that has nothing to do with a primary insurance amount stepping up, but it has everything to do with more Social Security benefits coming in. So if we've looked at those different pieces, we also want to come back lightly to the life planning side of things, because even if you were not compensated for your work, there are a lot of studies that are out there that say that if you're enjoying your work and you're engaged and you have people that you're seeing, relationships that are important to you, your quality of life, your enjoyment in life will be higher by doing that work, whether you got paid or not. And so there's a lot of life planning, there's a lot of intangible consequences to the decisions that we make here. It's not, one of the studies that's out there would show that the highest level of increased mortality, especially for men, is the month that they retire. And a lot of men retire at 62 so they can get those benefits for Social Security. We want to make sure that the life planning here comes first and foremost, so that you look at this not just from a standpoint of whether my Social Security benefits might be increased, but the quality of life that you have, both in your working years and then in a season of retirement or some other pursuit. So now we come full circle. We come all the way back to that key question again that we have that says, what does it do to our primary insurance amount if we continue to work after full retirement age? And the key here is, how many years of earnings do we have, and what does that earnings look like? So if we have more than 35 years of earnings, and especially if we have more than 35 years of strong earnings, then that's going to mean that the bump that we get is probably going to be much less. Now, if we have some holes in our years, in our work history, let's say that we went home and took care of kids for 10, 15, 20 years, or let's just say we got into the workforce late because we had, a lot of education that maybe prevented us from really having a high level of income until age 35 or 40 even, then those would be scenarios where the earnings that we have may be replaced at a reasonable clip in there. So we'll talk through a few examples here to try to nail down exactly the considerations here.
Yeah. Well, and coming back to your point, a lot of those questions of, well, how does it benefit me? How does it, if I work till 67, if I work till 70? Mm-hmm. The answer is it depends. Yeah. Just like you were saying, it depends. Do you enjoy your work, or is it really taxing on you? Well, If it's really taxing and you've already got peak earnings for 35 years, then let's talk about scaling back. If you don't want to finish work, if you like what you're doing and maybe just want to consult, it may be worth your time. It's not worth your Social Security,
right.
but it's worth your time to be able to alleviate that stress, to tear down. So really, when we think about this, it all comes back to that life plan. And that answer is going to be, it depends.
It depends, exactly.
All right, so walk us through some of these scenarios, Spencer.
Yeah, so let's talk about Jane. Meet Jane. She's a university professor. Like a lot of folks, she did her undergraduate study, graduated at 22, had a PhD by 27, started work that year. Took 5 years to get tenure. And so at age 32, basically was kind of at that earnings level that's not too dissimilar when we think about it in today's dollars versus that time's dollars. The earnings is not too much different when adjusted for inflation over a 35-year time span. And let's just say that Jane is looking at things and saying, well, I still enjoy teaching. I just don't want to be a part of the university committees. I don't want to, be involved in all the politics of this. So I've got an opportunity to teach for the next 3 years to make maybe 45% of my income, but not have all of the stress there. Well, in her circumstance, this could be a great move to continue to work because she still has income, might not need to tap into Social Security until age 70, but her earnings history is probably not going to be helped by another 3 years of work that's at a lower level. So if she's making half or less than she's made and she has 35 high years of earnings, not going to move her benefit $1 even. So the thing that she has to grapple with, and we'll make the math easy here, but the thing that she has to grapple with, let's say she was making $100,000 as a professor, and now she's going to make $40,000 as a professor. Well, she's still going to be paying, for Medicare, for Social Security at a clip of about 15% between her and her employer. So it may just be 7.5% or 7.65% on her side of things, but she's not getting any benefit from that. So between what she pays in for Social Security, let's just say that the university matches her amount, as most employers do, but she has 7.65%. Let's just say that her federal tax level is at 22% and that she's got some state taxes. About a third of her income is going to go to taxes there. So she's just got to be comfortable with that reality. For some folks, it's much higher even than that, and they're not going to get any kind of Social Security benefit with that, particularly for our folks who are employed, self-employed. They may be contractors, they may be doing consulting work. Sometimes it's 40 or even 50% of their income is going to go towards tax. But that still may be fine because they're still getting benefit in other ways and being able to enjoy their work, and they do have an extra amount of living and giving that they can enjoy, along with potentially being able to defer Social Security income. So,
all right, so thanks for walking us through Jane. Let's shift now and let's look at Paul. Paul was a physician. He had a couple years of really strong earnings right after he graduated from med school, went into private practice. And then he decided, man, the grind is just really tough. But he felt that call to go and serve the poorest of the poor and worked, let's say, with Doctors Without Borders. Goes overseas, spends a quantity of time there, the majority of his working career. How does it affect Paul if he comes back?
Yeah, so if he comes back and he wants to do some level of work, and let's just say that he has still significant income there, then he's going to be replacing those $0 years or those really low years, and he might be seeing his primary insurance amount upped by that $128 on a month-to-month basis that we talked about, in our former one there, where he's beyond the first bend point, but he's not to the second bend point. So he actually is still getting some benefit for working in terms of his Social Security primary insurance amount. But for him, it may even be more significant that he's able to defer taking his Social Security benefit out to age 70 if he works from 67 to 70 and allows that benefit to increase. So there's kind of a double benefit in his situation because he's replacing some of those zero or those really low income years, unlike what we just saw with our professor friend.
Yeah. All right, so Spencer, last example. It's kind of a little bit of a different one, but let's think about Randall. He's an executive. He's had 36 great years of work where he's had that entire Social Security wage base filled. What about for him? He's getting to that point where he's thinking, okay, maybe it's time to tear back. Maybe I should keep another year or two of income to make sure I get the maximum amount of Social Security. What does it benefit Randall?
Well, like we've talked about with Jane, the reality is that because he has 35 high years, it's not going to move him much. One of the surprising things actually is that it might move him a little bit, in that the Social Security calculation, as we've detailed over and over again, is pretty wonky. And the wage base changes on a year-to-year basis. And so even if he has the entire wage base that he's paid in there are some years going back that are higher than others. And if this current year is higher than one of those years, then he'll actually see his benefit step up by a few dollars on a month-to-month basis. So it will have a little bit of an impact if he continues at that highest level, but it won't have much of an impact. We're not talking $60 a month. We're talking more like $2 to $6 a month there. So a little bit of an impact that might be surprising for some folks, but again, we mainly throw in this example to say that there are a lot of different parts of this calculation, and there are some surprises where you can be a handful of dollars off one way or another, and some of that is just because the wage base is different every year.
Mm-hmm. So Spencer, like we talked about earlier, it depends. Mm-hmm. Taking Social Security, it depends on your life plan, it depends on your financial plan. And that's why with clients, we always come back and we start with that life planning element. Okay, what are those things that give you energy in life? Mm-hmm. What are those things that you are longing for? What are those goals? What are those dreams and visions that you have for your life? Mm-hmm. And then we build a financial plan. Because the reality is, whether you work another year, it may not affect your Social Security, or it could tremendously affect it. Mm-hmm. And so with every client, we come back to, okay, what are those goals? What are those dreams? What are those desires? And then let's see what it fits in with Social Security. We don't start with Social Security and say, this is where you need to go. And so clients, if you have questions about your Social Security benefit, we would love to talk with you about it. Everybody else, always reach out to a financial professional, reach out to your tax professional before you take any action based on this. And remember, Social Security is wonky, and we'll talk to you next time. If you like these financial planning videos, please share with a friend, and if you have questions, go to our website at SeriousRetirement.com. This content was provided by Retirement Planning Services. We are located in Knoxville, Tennessee. You can visit our website at SeriousRetirement.com. The information in this recording is intended for general educational and informational purposes only, and should not be construed as investment advisory, financial planning, legal, tax, or other professional advice based on your specific situation. Please consult with your professional advisor before taking any action based on its contents. Advisory services offered through Retirement Planning Services, LLC.